Before we begin, I want you to imagine something. Imagine sitting in your own living room, in a house that still smells like someone you love. But that person is gone. No shouting. No dramatic guvie. Just silence. If you love emotional stories about relationships, heartbreak, and unexpected connections, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Because stories like this, they stay with you. And trust me, this one will. Michael sat in the living room staring at the shadows stretching slowly across the walls. The late evening light filtered in through the curtains, dim and tired, as if even the sun had lost interest in shining on this house. Just hours earlier, his wife Claire had left. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't cried. She hadn't even accused him. She had simply packed. The quiet efficiency of it had been the cruelest part. The zipper of her suitcase sliding shut had sounded louder than any argument they had ever had. It was the sound of finality, of decision, of something that had been weighing on her long before he realized it. Michael could still hear her footsteps walking down the hallway. Slow, steady, uncertain, but not stopping. He remembered standing in the doorway of their bedroom, wanting to say something dramatic, something that would make her pause. But the words never came. Instead, he had asked something small. "Are you sure?" And she had looked at him, not with anger, but with exhaustion. That look hurt more than rage ever could. Now the house felt wrong. Not empty. Wrong. The photographs on the mantel still showed two smiling people. Vacations. Anniversaries. Christmas mornings. The kind of pictures couples frame when they believe those moments are foundations, not fleeting chapters. Michael stood and walked toward the fireplace. He picked up one frame, a photo from 5 summers ago. They were on a beach, sunburned and laughing. Claire's head tilted toward him, her smile wide, genuine, unguarded. He traced that smile with his thumb. When had it stopped being real? When had it stopped being for him? The signs had been there. They always are. The dinners where she barely spoke. The way she would scroll through her phone while he talked about his day. The "I'm just tired" explanations. The late nights at work. The way her eyes had begun to look past him, instead of into him. But Michael had convinced himself that love was enough. Love could fix distance. Love could outlast disconnection. Love could survive silence. Right. He walked into the kitchen. 2 coffee mugs sat on the counter. He had made them that morning. One for him. One for her. He had added a little extra cinnamon to hers, the way she liked. She hadn't touched it. The surface of her coffee was smooth and cold now. Untouched. Like something abandoned before it had the chance to be enjoyed. Michael picked up both mugs and poured them into the sink. The dark liquid swirled down the drain, disappearing without resistance. He stared at it longer than he should have. It felt symbolic. Like watching pieces of his marriage dissolve. Back on the couch, Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The silence pressed in on him. He wanted to call someone. A friend. His brother. Anyone. Just to hear a voice that would tell him, this isn't the end of everything. But pride stopped him. Shame stopped him. Confusion stopped him. Because what would he say? My wife left me, and I'm not even sure when she stopped loving me. That kind of sentence doesn't come easily. He leaned back, closing his eyes. That's when the doorbell rang. Michael froze. His heart jumped into his throat. Claire. For a split second, hope flared violently inside him. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe this was just fear. Maybe. No. Claire wasn't impulsive. She didn't make dramatic reversals. If she walked away, she had already processed it 100 times. Still he stood. His legs felt heavier than usual as he crossed the living room. When he opened the door, it wasn't Claire. It was Evelyn. Claire's mother. Evelyn stood there calmly, dressed in a simple cardigan, holding a small leather handbag. She looked composed. But her eyes carried something deeper. Concern. Strength. And something else Michael couldn't quite name. He swallowed. Of all the people he expected to see tonight, she was not one of them. Michael, she said softly. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusatory. It was warm. May I come in? He stepped aside automatically. He had braced himself for anger. For blame. For a mother defending her daughter. Instead, she walked in gently, as though she understood this house was fragile right now. They sat across from each other in the same living room that had felt unbearable only minutes earlier. Michael tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. She's gone. Evelyn nodded. I know. The words were steady. She called me before she left. His throat tightened. So you know she doesn't want this anymore. Evelyn paused. Sometimes silence is where wisdom gathers itself. Sometimes, she said carefully, people leave not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to stay. Michael blinked. That wasn't what he expected. She's searching for something, Evelyn continued. And it's not something you could have fixed alone. He stared at her. Where was the accusation? Where was the anger? Instead, there was understanding. It disarmed him completely. I loved her, Michael said suddenly. The words spilled out before he could stop them. I did everything I knew how to do. Maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't enough. His voice cracked. He buried his face in his hands. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Don't say that, she said gently but firmly. You gave her love. You gave her stability. You gave her a home. Sometimes people drift not because the other person failed, but because they are restless within themselves. He lowered his hands slowly. No one had defended him all day. Not even himself. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? Because, she replied softly, you gave everything. Hours passed. Michael talked. About the distance. About pretending things were fine. About fearing confrontation. About loving someone who was slowly disappearing in front of him. Evelyn listened. Really listened. No interruptions. No corrections. Just presence. At one point he looked at her and said, You're her mother. You should hate me. She shook her head gently. Hate doesn't heal anyone. Then she said something that shifted something deep inside him. I see your heart, Michael. No one had said that to him in a very long time. Later, Evelyn stood and walked into the kitchen. She didn't ask where things were. She moved as though she belonged there, not in ownership, but in familiarity. Soon she returned with 2 cups of tea. He wrapped his hands around the mug. Warmth seeped into his fingers. It wasn't just tea. It was care. A quiet reminder that he was not invisible. Don't let this moment convince you that you are less, she told him. You are still the man who loved honestly. That matters. He watched her as she spoke, not just listening to her words, but noticing her. The steadiness in her voice. The softness in her eyes. The way she seemed grounded in a way Claire hadn't been for a long time. A thought flickered in his mind. Dangerous. Unwelcome. He pushed it away. It feels easier talking to you, he admitted quietly, than it did talking to Claire this past year. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached across and placed her hand lightly over his. The touch lasted only a second, but it felt like something more than comfort. It felt like recognition. Like 2 people acknowledging each other's loneliness. She withdrew her hand gently, but the warmth lingered. For the first time in months, Michael felt something fragile begin to form. Not happiness. Not relief. But hope. As the clock neared midnight, Evelyn stood. I should let you rest, she said softly. At the door she paused. You don't have to go through this alone. When the door closed behind her, Michael stood in the quiet house once more. But the silence had changed. It was no longer crushing. It was contemplative. He walked back to the living room and sat down. Claire was gone. That truth remained. But something else had entered the space tonight. Understanding. Companionship. And a connection he hadn't expected. He didn't know what it meant. He didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time since the suitcase zipper closed, he didn't feel completely abandoned. And deep inside him, a new chapter had already begun. If this story touched something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep, unforgettable stories. And remember, sometimes the end of one chapter is just the quiet beginning of another.